Hey guys, Tao Turns here, where we practice Wu Wei on a board. For today's video, we're going to go over how to push on a skateboard. One of the main ways we can generate speed on our board is to push. Woo. Sweet. So before we get into pushing, there are two main stances I want you guys to make sure we have locked in. So stances meaning like ways of standing on the board. And the first one is our skater stance, right? Our skater stance is where our shoulders are squared up with the board and our toes are out to the side, right? So I'm nice and aligned and I'm ready for anything on my board. Woo! So my skater stance is how I'm standing on my board when I'm skating. And preferably, when you're standing on your board, you want to cover the bottom two bolts and show the top two bolts of each truck. So the bottom two right here, so my foot's in the pocket, and then the bottom two right here, so my foot doesn't go on the nose, and I end up going over the handlebars, as if I was on a bike and I went over the front, right? So, most importantly, just never cover the top two bolts on your board, because then you're more likely to go over the nose, especially when you're trying to push. So always cover those bottom two bolts, and our skater stance involves pointing our toes out to the side and our shoulders are squared up with the board. Now don't get this confused with our pushing stance. So unlike our skater stance where our toes are out to the side, we're actually going to point our toes forward and our shoulders are now like perpendicular to the board. They are going across this way. Because now when I want to push, it's going to be a lot easier to push this way with my foot out to the side like this. It'd be kind of awkward if I was lined up with the board in my skater stance. It's not so awkward on a snowboard. This is kind of how you skate when you're on a snowboard, is your foot's behind and you're still in your stance like this. But it's a little weirder on a skateboard because when you're skating on a snowboard, you're just trying to get onto the chairlift, right? On a skateboard, we're pushing way more often. There's a lot more pushing involved in skateboarding. So we're gonna push like this with our toes pointing forward, your foot out to the side. Make sure you're not over here like this, all twisted up in some weird direction. And also very important, make sure your front foot is on the board and not your back foot. So we're pushing Mongo. That's kind of like trying to drive a car with the back wheels of the car, or like ride a bike with the handlebars on the back of the bike. There's just way less control from back here. So let's make sure that front foot's on first. And when we're pushing, we're facing forward, our toes are pointing forward. We can push like this. But what a lot of people get confused on when they're starting out is they start to skate in their pushing stance, like this, which is very awkward. We have a lot less balance and control from this position, because now my shoulders are over one side of the board and the other, and I'm all twisted up with my legs, trying to like get my feet to stay on the board. So, very important, make sure you are not in a pushing stance while you're skating on your board. That's what your skater stance is for. So, only in our pushing stance when we're pushing, and only in our skater stance when we're skating. And in order to transition from one to the other, we're gonna go through 4 simple steps in order to do so. So, since I'm regular, I'm gonna face this way. Regular is left foot in front, right? So I'm using my left foot on the board to push. My back foot is the pushing foot. If you're goofy, then your right foot's gonna be on the board first, or it's gonna be your lead foot. So, as I'm going to get from my pushing stance to my skater stance, I'm going to bring my back foot up onto the board. So I need to put a little more weight onto my front foot, balancing on my board like this. So then I can get my back foot over to the back of the board. It might be a little easier to find some grass or like a crack to practice this, so your board doesn't roll around too much. So Put all your weight on your front foot. And then your back foot is gonna go onto the board with your toes facing out, like so. So that's step one, bringing your back foot onto the board like this. Step two is turning your front foot out to the side. So then we're in our skater stance, like so. And then step three is gonna transition back into our pushing stance again, where my front foot points forward again, like so. Now I take my back foot off for step four, and now I'm back in my pushing stance, and I can push. Cool. So let's run through that a little faster. So when I'm trying to get from my pushing stance to my skater stance, I'm going to bring my back foot up onto the board, toes out to the side, and then step two, I can turn my front foot out to the side like this. So I'm ready to skate. And then to get back to my pushing stance, we got step three, front foot turns back forward again. And then step four, back foot comes off. So I'm back in my pushing stance. So all together now, we got step 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want you to run through this a couple times if you're trying to learn how to push, just by doing step 1, back foot, 2, front foot, 3, front foot, 4, back foot. Or you can even just think about your feet. Back foot, front foot, back foot. To get from pushing to skating, and then from skating back to pushing. Sweet. Easy enough, right? So we're just going to start with our one foot up on the front. So we're in our pushing stance, get into our skating stance, so we can do some cool tricks, right? And then if we want to push again, I'm going to turn my front foot out, take my back foot off so I can push, and get ready for another trick. Skirt. Awesome. Cool. That's how we can push on our board. Another great way to build more confidence on our board is to put all of our weight on our front foot. So this is what I call the ninja stance. This is what I want you guys to try out if you're still learning how to push. So if I'm trying to balance on my board, put all my weight on this foot that's on the board, we can try and balance on it like a ninja, like this. Again, maybe take your board to some grass or find a crack, like so. Put your front foot on the board, make sure it's your front foot, whether you're regular or goofy. And then see if you can just put all of your weight on this foot, not on your back foot, so we can balance on this foot and get into our ninja stance. Because the reason why we want to practice that is we don't really want to put a lot of weight on our back foot when we're pushing. That's a very common mistake, is all of our weight's back here on this foot, because it's scary to get our weight on the board, to actually be on top of the board. But this is where we want to be. Can't really skate if you're not over the board. So if you're able to balance on this foot, then we're in control of the board and we're actually skating. You can even turn with just your front foot as you're pushing. Woo. But very important that we're not skating or pushing like this, because this is a very timid, not a very confident way of getting our board to get moving. If we want to get moving and actually have confidence and control, we got to be over that board, right on top of it. So very important, make sure that we're not putting all of our weight on our back foot. We want to put all of our weight on our front foot. And the only time we're putting any weight on our back foot is just that brief moment of pushing. I'm only putting a little bit of weight on this foot just so I can push off the ground and generate a little momentum, a little bit of speed. And then I'm right back onto my front foot again. So we don't need to be back here. We're standing up on this foot, and we're just pushing with our back foot for a brief moment, and then back to the front foot again. So a quick little push, little weight transfer, back to the front foot again. Woo. Cool. And then once you've pushed, we go from pushing stance to skater stance. And if you want to push again, we can go from skater stance back to pushing stance. Let's make sure we're turning that front foot after you push. That's the most crucial step. Let's get in this front foot back to sideways again. Sweet. All right. So make sure to go out there and practice your ninja stance on your board so we can put all of our weight on that front foot and have a lot more confidence and control on our board when we're pushing. Oh, going backwards. All right, cool. So in every video, we're gonna map out each trick. If you wanna learn more about mapping a trick, you can check out our previous videos on the MAP, Move, Align, Pace. But basically, this is more of a 2 out of 10 on the unmoving to moving scale because we're starting to figure out balance and control, and we're moving our body a little more. So we are going to be starting to move a little bit more in terms of like if we're in the flow, we're not really moving our body a lot, or if we're like doing a whole lot of movement for like a big tray flip. Woo! See that? Couldn't even pull it off because there's so much movement. Sweet. So that's a 2 on the scale. As far as our alignment goes for that A, we're gonna be focusing on our rotational movement. Because when we're going from pushing to skating, we need to rotate our body in order to do so. We gotta make sure our rotation's not off when we're skating, because now we're all off to the side, our legs are all twisted up, and we don't have as much balance. So make sure we're rotating our body and our shoulders to transition from skater stance to pushing stance. Cool. And then as far as pace goes, that P, we're starting to generate some pace. So we're going from like no pace to however much pace you want, really. Unless you're going down a hill, then you can really start to get the miles per hour going up. But our pace is going from like nothing to as fast as you can go, at least on flat ground. Woo. Awesome. Woo. Well, I hope you enjoyed our video on how to push on a skateboard. Make sure to comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I shall see you guys in the next video.